Great. Hi everyone, welcome to this talk. Today we're welcoming Damjanski, who's a Yugoslavian, New York-based artist. Damjan and I worked on the show Digital Bodies created for MoCDA, which is now available on MoCDA's website. And so today is about getting to know his work a bit more. So yes, welcome Damjan, welcome everyone. We'll be also running a Q&A at the end of this talk. So if you feel free to ask questions and we'll be happy to answer them. So to kick in this talk, I think it would be great to start talking about Damjan's work. Damjan, you've been having a lot of projects happening lately. Could you give us a bit of an overview of what you've been doing and so these days?
Yeah, totally. Hello, everybody, and hi, Marie. Thank you so much for putting this together, and also Serena and the whole MoCDA team. When I talk about my work, there's like a theme that is ongoing, which I kind of call illogical connections, and it's based on this idea that usually people, they start with a why. I usually don't. I have a couple of topics that interest me, like black boxes or power structures, and I'm doing my research on them, and then at a certain point that creates some thoughts that I'm very fascinated by, and I just try to go after it and do something with it. And ultimately, after I put it out, I see or try to learn why I did it and learn more about myself in the whole process. So I would say that kind of sums it up how I do things.
Okay, so it's a bit more of an ongoing process then.
Yeah.
And so could you tell us a bit more about what black boxes mean to you, how it impacts your work?
Yeah, black box is kind of a term that comes from software development, and it's this idea that people create something and you can't see what's happening within the box. So you see what's coming inside and what's coming outside. My take on it is that usually black boxes are human created. Even if you would say you create an AI and it's a black box, I would say that actually you can see what's happening in this neural network. Oh, my camera just went away, I think.
Yeah,
let's see if I can change that. But basically, you can't see what's happening within this neural network. You can try to rationalize that, but based on IP, and people are not showing other people what's happening in them. So this turns into a black box because you can't see what's really happening there, and that ultimately is human-made, I would say. I'm gonna stop my camera for 1 second and put it back on. And maybe turn off my snap camera. That might help. 1 sec. I just need another second.
No worries, no worries. But so another thing, so because that's something I read in your bio is okay, I use black box approaches, and the other thing was the use of performance. And there are two features that I found consistently throughout your work. And so could you explain us a bit more about this other aspect, which is performance and social interactions?
Yes. I'm trying to figure out this camera thing, but when I do that, let me try it. So basically, when we go to the black boxes, I would say that a lot of projects deal with that. So for example, even the MoMA project, which was an augmented reality gallery within the MoMA, and then making it open source so everybody can do it, is this idea that the creation process is a black box on its own. Some people sit together in a room, they make a decision who should be shown. You might gonna know who they looked at before, but you don't know why they did the decision. So the idea with MoMA was to open up this black box and give everybody the tools and the chances to show their things. And performance, I don't know, it's an interesting question. I feel usually things that you do online, there's almost a performative character to it. I have an intent what I would like people to do, but ultimately they end up doing or using it totally differently. And that's quite exciting. I like that a lot. There was a project that I did Let me see how I figured that out with the camera. But there was a project that I did which was called Humans Not Invited, which was a captcha that basically filtered out humans and only let programs pass. And at the end, people saw it more as a game and tried to game the system, which was never something that I foresaw, but it was kind of interesting at the same time.
Cool. And so going back to like what we've been doing recently in terms of projects, first off, we could talk about the nude series, which you've been featuring in MoCDA's show Digital Bodies. Oh, you're back. That's great. Good to see you, Damien. So could you tell us a bit more about this new series you've included in the show? It also relates a lot to humans, their presence, their absence, and what are the questionings you've had with regards to this work?
Yeah, I think in the last year, I created a piece which is called Bye Bye Camera, which is like an application, a photo app, basically, where you take images and it removes humans automatically. So you have like a system that detects humans and then another neural network that tries to redraw the background. So it removes the people or the people that it detects from the image. And that was kind of born from, I don't know, from the feelings. I was a little bit confused at that time. I was scared and wondering, what are we doing? Climate change became a bigger topic. And so all those questions were in my mind. And one big question was, hey, are we as a human species good for the planet? And I don't want to answer it, and I don't have an answer for that. But out of that thought came, okay, how would the world look like without us? And that kind of inspired the Bye Bye Camera. So Nude Studies is out of this Bye Bye Camera piece, a series that I started to create where I take images of people in certain locations and ultimately they're removed. But the way how this app works is it keeps certain traces, like the shadow, for example, which I call like artifacts or surreal artifacts maybe. And those kind of create like a new interesting dynamic within a picture. So that's an ongoing series that I'm doing right now. And 2 out of those pieces are the one, actually 3 that we showed at your show at the MoCDA exhibition.
Yes. So out of like the 3 works exhibited in the show, we have 1 GIF image, and then we have 2 still images. The 2 still images are now tokenized and on Super Rare platform, and so perhaps we could have a look at them. Can you talk a bit more about these the stills and the GIFs and what you've been?
Yeah, the GIF is a new iteration of the system where I'm trying to like work with also moving images. So that's kind of like something new. And then the stills are like the ongoing series that I'm doing. And I'm very fascinated by what happens when the person is taking out and how the shadows are influencing it. It kind of looks a little bit like a ghost or like a blob. And at the same time, depending where you put the light sources, you can play around with that. And while the person is taken out of the image, you can still see that there was something or there was somebody. So I like the idea, even if it's kind of like a reference to like maybe like a post-human scenario. And like, even if we would be gone from the planet, there would be enough things that we left here that still remind everybody or everything that is here that humans been there. So it's kind of like an analogy to that.
Yeah, it's funny because like looking at it, like it's neither gone nor like absolutely present. It's a bit of an in-between space where like we can feel like the trace, but there's no one being there. And that's something that you've been carrying on in other works lately during confinement. I know you've been like working on other projects which are also related to this notion of erasure and human traces.
Yeah, like in the beginning of the year, I started together with a long-time collaborator, Vasco from Lisbon. Hi, Vasco. We started to update the tech stack. And we're trying to apply it now to like movies or to like the moving images. And so the first thing out of that was, okay, let's apply it to a movie and take all the humans out of a movie. And then during that time, COVID kicked in. So everybody from us watched the movie Contagion, and we thought, okay, why don't we try that as our first movie? So what we did, we took the trailer of Contagion and removed all the people from that trailer. And that looks very surreal because we also used the program to also remove the voices. So you turn this trailer into like a different piece in a way. And now in parallel, we're working on like the full movie. And it plays in the same world as the bye-bye camera and the nude studies, but it's kind of like a different take. And it also like, I don't know, it creates a different feeling. Like there's another series that I started during COVID, which is basically I try every day to take 5,000 steps to like kind of stay healthy and sane. And while I was outside, I realized that a lot of people that are outside are the ones with dogs. So I started to take portrait pictures of those people with their dogs. And what happens, the camera takes the people out, but the dogs are staying in there. And the beauty, which is kind of like cute, like even the leash goes still up, but then the person is missing. So that series is called Post-Human Dogs, and it's a different take on the whole idea, on the whole theme. But what I realized, people really like the dogs. Not so many people like the movie. Like with the movie, I had even like with my friends a couple of conversations where they're like, oh, this is actually quite sad and this is like too soon. And it evokes a different set of feelings, while the dogs looks more uplifting, I guess, and maybe it's easier to digest. I really like them, but I'm a big fan of the movie, to be honest.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but the cast looks amazing. Well, the original cast, because like in your version we won't see them really, but yeah, it's very like it's like a few years into the future. It's absolutely what we're living now, and the questions we've been having. It's quite scary in a way, but it's funny how it's anticipated this situation. But yeah, so the dog images are also like a nice way to look into like this setting of confinement and emptiness. So that's really nice. And another question I had was about like computer goggles, because you say, for instance, that in your Post-Human Dogs project, like the camera recognizes like a human, but not the dog, and so it erases one part and the other. Computer goggles is a bit of the same idea in a way of like keeping some elements in, other out, and yeah. So it also carries this idea of erasure. I think. How do you see it?
Yeah. Maybe to a certain degree it does. It came a little bit more from playing a lot around with the bye-bye camera. I realized that sometimes there are some humans that the camera doesn't detect. So I started to like read a little more into it and try to look into it. And I realized, okay, the tool that people or that we are using, for example, is an object identifier. And the object identifier is trained by different models, by different data sets, basically, that say this pixel constellation is a human being, or this pixel constellation. But there's sometimes some pixel constellation that the system doesn't detect as a human being. I always joke that it's a vampire, but the truth is that it's just maybe like a lack of data sets, or like it needs more data. So coming out of that, the more I read about it, I thought like, okay, maybe it's interesting to play around with that theme and dive more into it. Because when we look at what's happening today, we have like everywhere cameras, we have everybody's recorded all the time, we have like surveillance resulting out of that, and all those even like bad things. So it was for me like very interesting to see, okay, how are these systems really working? And in Google and computer goggles is actually one try to like understand it more and to make it like open it more up so people can understand. Because every time when you snap an image, the only thing you will see are like the objects that the algorithm detected and like the squares around it on the black background. So it's on the one side like a way to see, okay, how good is this technology working? Where is it working? Where is it failing? But then also on the other side, it's also an interesting way to create like new compositions. So it became for me a tool where I'm like, okay, look, when I take an image here, what kind of composition comes out of this and out of that? And I like to put it more into like the landscape painting of photography world. And it's kind of like a different take on landscapes. Well, you can probably also use it for portraits, which is then usually just one square. But yeah.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's quite impressive actually to like face this image where it just becomes a black screen. Like I feel like we do understand that like AI detects like some certain features within an image, but seeing that it's just a black screen and just like detecting like different areas is actually quite a compelling way to visualize the fact that they don't see the environment we see at all. So yeah, really interesting. Actually, would you like to us to show like a little abstract of like your video of Contagion, so people get a bit of a better grasp of the more like ghostly feeling of erasing
Totally. I'm
people?
going to try it. Let's see how my camera... Oh, you're doing it. Perfect. Thank you. So what happens here is it's basically like the original trailer for the Contagion movie that then runs through the system and removes all the people within it. And some scenes where there are like a lot of people you see, it's very glitchy, but then on these scenes where it's just like 1 or 2 people in there, the system works quite well. And when you listen to the sound, which we can't do here right now, then you would still hear the soundtrack and the voices are removed, but they still leave a little bit of sprinkles of like some mumbling, like you hear, which adds to like a weird, surreal, almost like a dark theme of feeling.
Yeah, we can really feel like this presence of something which we can't really grasp or know what it is, which is something we find back in the stills and GIF you've been showing in the exhibition Digital Bodies, which was definitely about like how we depict ourselves in a digital space, or how digital tools have changed the way we represent people. So that's great. And so one question I wanted to ask you was, what do you find so fascinating about this notion of erasure? Because it's a full process. I mean, we see it time and time again, and it looks really important to your work. So I wanted to know what keeps you going in this quest. What is the little?
Yeah, there are like different things that really interest me. There's on the one side, I mean, you can do it perfectly and probably take frame by frame and paint everybody out, and you would have a perfect movie where people are taken out. But at the same time, by working with a program and using different algorithms that detect humans, the program does certain decisions that I never asked this program to do. Like, for example, it takes out humans, but you see some scenes where there are like still some humans in there that are framed in a picture. So it's not real humans, like it is real humans, but it's like just a picture of a human, and the program lets this person in there, which is for me like quite exciting in the terms of, okay, this still works in this whole post-human idea scenario. So there's always this interesting play with the machine and your intentions. That's number one, what I find interesting. Then on the other side, I do like the frictions or the surreal artifacts this program leaves. Like those traces, they make it feel a bit more surreal. And then by playing around with it, you get like all kinds of different aesthetics. And I find that very, very interesting to like research that more and play around with it. There's one artist that I really, really like, that's Cyprien Gaillard, and he has like this whole idea of the downfall of an empire, where he like compares our society today to maybe to the Incas or like to the Romans. And I don't want to put it in the same row, but I would say that this idea of, okay, what's happening if we wouldn't be there, it's an interesting scenario to play with, and it's quite interesting for me to read about it and think it through. It's not a scenario that I really would like to be a scenario that we're heading towards.
It's more like a dystopian anticipation of like what could be that we don't want to happen. And so you've been also using like lots of apps in your work. Could you talk a bit more about this media and why is it so vital to you?
Yeah, and like what I enjoy about apps, or like, let's put it this way, I probably have like my phone with me all the time. A lot of times I realize this is actually like a quite useful tool to create new things. So an app these days is kind of like a brush for me. It's just a new tool to create the things that I would like to create. But then on the other side, I really enjoy to open it up that everybody can use it and then see what they're doing, or maybe enabling other people to do other things with it. So yeah, I'm wearing right now a Wikipedia t-shirt, I realized, and I'm a big open source supporter. So I like to open source those apps.
Okay, and so lately, on top of these apps which you've been developing, and like I said, there's been computer goggles and like Bye Bye Camera, but you've also been producing this Fit Art app for Roers and Butch Gallery lately, which where you collaborated with like a dozen of like net artists. So it's a beautiful production. And now you're also going into like looking at still image and other ways to present the work you create through these apps. Could you talk more about this new exploration in terms of media?
Yeah, yep. Let me try it. I get my thoughts together. Yes, I think like I started doing my art mostly online on websites, and so I sometimes do things that they're IRL and like that work in the what's called not the real world, but like in the physical world. But lately, especially in this year, everything got accelerated a little bit. So there's a lot of focus on online stuff, which might go away again, whatever. But within that realm, there was a chance. Okay, how can we create like an online show that people can access from everywhere? And that was kind of the starting point when Nina and I talked with each other. And then on top of it, I started to nerd out a lot on gym apps because I couldn't go out, and I usually go running in the morning to kind of reduce anxiety levels, but also to not get too big because I like sweets a lot. So I downloaded a bunch of them and realized at a certain point, oh wow, this could actually be like a very nice framework for like a performance show. And the more Nina and I talked, the more this idea developed into Fit Art, what we launched 2 months ago. And it's basically like a gym app where each exercise is done by an artist, which is like a performance. And she got this awesome crew of artists together that I'm very happy about.
That's great. And so moving on to the part where like you use more like still images and either like in prints or tokenized. I know this is something you've also been looking at lately. How does it complement your work with apps?
Yeah, I think because most of the stuff lives online, there's always the question, okay, where can it go else? And there's thought number one, okay, you turn it into physical objects, you print it, for example. I'm trying to do that right now with post-human dogs. But then there's also always the question, does it need to be a physical object? It can stay in the digital realm. And that's where, for example, a blockchain platform or like tokenizing gets interesting. So that's, for example, why we tokenized the first two pieces onto super rare of the nude studies to see, okay, how does it work out? How does it play out? And is it staying true to the art or not? So it's always this question, okay, when you have this one image on your computer, what are you going to do with it? And those are two of the images, yes.
Yeah, so these are your two works available on Super Rare these days for bidding, and that were also part of the show we organized at MoCDA.
Yeah, this is nude study 29, and then there's nude study 17, which is a good friend of mine from Brazil who was here in New York.
And here is MoCDA's exhibition So we have a bit of an overview of like the different artworks we had along with your work. So this was the gift. I love this gift because like really like the shadow is so streamlined. It really feels like ghostly.
Yeah, there's something bubbly happening. Yeah. Thank you so much for putting the MoCDA show together. It's very beautiful.
Yeah, it was really nice organizing, and we organized it with Serena, Chloe, and Tina, which was a great team effort. It was wonderful working with these talented artists. So yes, we had Maurice Benayoun, we had Akata, we had Frenetic Void. I mean, there are many of them. I won't list them all, but you can have a look on the website because it's a really exciting show to visit, and there's also like many descriptions to the work. So it's a good way to delve into these artists' practices. So I encourage you to visit. So yes, I don't know if anyone has like questions they would like to ask Damien before we wrap up the talk. Yes. Otherwise, I have like another question is that it's something we've discussed. I think the first time we had a chat together was that you don't really like talking about like the process of like doing these works, but more you prefer to engage about like the result and actually like what you're doing in the back end, kind of.
Yeah.
I remember you saying that, and I thought it would be an interesting topic to.
It's probably not that I don't like it. It's more that I have a hard time to talk about it. That's probably like gets closer to the truth. Because there are sometimes some thoughts that really fascinate me, and there's this energy that I just, okay, you're going to do this, but I can't really pinpoint why I'm doing it. I can pinpoint the feeling that I had in that moment, or like what I was reading and what influenced this fascination or this thought. But it's very hard to say, I'm doing this because of this. So that's when people ask me, okay, why are you doing it? I sometimes just become a little bit awkward and stare and try to come up with a smart answer, to be honest. And usually I don't have it. And then I do it. And in hindsight, usually I find the reasons why I did it. And sometimes I don't. There are like some projects that I'm still wondering what caused it or why did I do it. But it's in a way like part of my process to learn more about myself, I would say. Yeah.
But also in terms of like the tools you're using to producing these apps and these images, that's what I remember asking you actually, and you mentioned that that you like to keep kind of your tools secret in a way, which is I think I see a lot of artists talking about which tools they use and how they produce their images, whereas in your work it seems like it's something you like to keep for yourself, and I'm sure there's a nice
I don't think it's like really keeping it for myself, because most of the time I work with like more and more people on things. It's more, do I want the conversation be, oh, is it YOLO version 3 as an object identifier versus that? It gears usually sometimes the conversation to a very more technical direction, while the thing why, or like the thing that it causes, or like the feelings, it's a different conversation. So I try to stay a little bit more out of the technical conversation and try maybe to talk more about, okay, this is what it is, and hopefully what it represents or what it feels like.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting because in a way it brings back this whole idea of the black box, and that the viewer is getting an output, but is not getting the full process. And as this is really interesting to your work, I'm feeling that, in a way it frames what viewers sees, so they perceive your work in a different way than what they would see if they understood it all as a process. So it gives another eyesight, I think.
That's a very cool thought. Thank you. I never looked at it that way. Yeah.
Okay, cool. We do not have that many questions, actually. Is there something you'd like to add, Damien, about like your practices lately and anything coming up, a project that we should be aware of?
I think we're good. I think we talked about most of the stuff. Maybe there are like 2 projects coming out next week, and there's one project that builds on top of the Google on computer goggles, which now I'm applying it to a website, onto a live stream. So it's more a moving version of the whole thing, which looks very interesting right now. I hope that the server complications will be solved by next week. Let's see. It's a little bit trickier than I thought. And then there might be another app coming out end of next week, where also that comes down to, okay, if Apple approves us in time or not, because they are sometimes... Yeah, they're sometimes a little bit tricky when you try to upload art to them. They let you through, but sometimes based on the reviewer, you can have a harder time, and so it's harder to plan with timings. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, let us know about when the release happens, so we'll gladly look at it, and yes, that will be great.
All right.
Well, maybe to wrap up this session, I thought maybe it's good to remind you that you can see Damjanski's work on MoCDA's at MoCDA's exhibition on our website, which is mocda.org. Also, Damjanski's work, nude studies are available on Super Rare for bidding, and we don't know until when, so hop on the website and check it out now. And yes, and then download computer goggles, have a look at Fit Art. These are great projects, and hopefully you'll get the chance to interact a bit more with Damjanski's work, which is absolutely fascinating and has many layers to it. So the more we look into it, the more we find clues, and I think it's really fascinating. So I hope you enjoy. Damien, it was lovely talking to you, and see everyone soon on MoCDA.
Hey, thank you so much, Marie, for putting all this together and taking the time, and everybody else who came here. Please be well and safe, and thank you to the whole MoCDA team. Yeah.
Bye.
Wonderful.
Bye, Damien. Yes.
Bye.